Oh, God, Happy New Year, Eric Boehlert. Hello.
Happy New Year to you. Good to see you.
This goes to your piece, how the New York Times covered white male VPs before Kamala Harris.
Yep.
And it is stunning. Going back to this moron, Dan Quayle. It's amazing, right? The rosy coverage, the puff pieces on vice presidents, and the difference between how Kamala Harris is covered.
Yeah, the New York Times didn't want to be left out of the Harris pile-on, which has been happening for months. So late last year, they did this piece about, it's
The intern she didn't say hi to in 1990?
Yeah. And, she's struggling, and what's her role? And gosh, her allies. Oh, the afterthought. Her allies are afraid she's an afterthought. So, I wrote about that last year, the whole trend. We talked about it. So I decided to go back, look, and what was the New York Times coverage of white male vice presidents during their first year in office?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's one of the things I'm complaining about. I mean, Dan Quayle got hit with that potato nonsense his fourth year in office. The idea that Kamala Harris, and this started back in May and June, Atlantic did this huge piece in June about how her vice presidency was a failure. She hadn't even hired her staff yet.
Yeah.
And so it was unprecedented in terms of the microscope, the negative coverage. So I went back and looked at, and gee, how did they cover Dan Quayle his first year, and Dick Cheney and Joe Biden and Mike Pence? And the answer is they covered them like they were all-stars. And, Dan Quayle was reinventing the vice presidency role, and Dick Cheney had unprecedented power, and Joe Biden was speaking his mind and being a forceful advocate for Obama. And Mike Pence was a rock, amid the Trump tumult. And it didn't surprise me, but that's exactly what I thought. You spend the first year kind of doing these puff pieces so you get access to the vice president's office and all his top aides.
Yeah.
And then maybe some negative coverage, but none of those white guys ever really got negative coverage. Mike Pence is most famous for being in danger of being hung in the Capitol during an insurrection. But Kamala Harris is getting worse coverage than he ever got.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no context. And if you don't think this is a different standard for a woman of color, then people are just blind.
Yeah. And also, it extends to the Biden coverage. As you tweeted, if Biden were a Republican, the press would put him on Mount Rushmore. Mm-hmm. You cannot argue with these stats that I just read before you came on, right?
Yeah, the economic coverage, the economic record, more jobs gained in the first year than any president of the United States, the biggest drop in unemployment in 1 year than any first-year president, on and on, consumer spending through the roof. The press keeps talking about inflation, which is a story, but you would think everyone was home alone with the doors locked in their wallet in a safe. Retail spending over the holiday season broke a 17-year record. It was up double digits from pre-pandemic.
And Eric, as you always say, they do one crisis story. Biden resolves that crisis. They just move on to the next thing. There's no thing about how, that thing we just said yesterday, it's all been solved. The supply chain and empty shelves and gas prices are coming down. Like, they don't ever do any follow-up stories. It's just next crisis, right?
Very rarely. The New York Times, to its credit, right before Christmas, did do a story on, all the packages did arrive. And here's why the UPS and FedEx had a 99% arrival time. But in that story, Joe Biden was never mentioned.
Yeah.
You go back to October, November, every supply chain crisis story, Biden was mentioned prominently because this was a huge problem for the White House. This was a huge problem for his presidency.
Yeah.
But then when it was fixed, there's no political implications anymore. Oh, it just happened. These brilliant entrepreneurs, these brilliant businessmen fixed it. And so, and it turns out the American CEO of Walmart said, actually, the White House had a big deal to do with it. But
Joe Biden uncanceled Christmas, I guess, and there was no coverage of that. I saved the Meet the Press, both sides do it segment.
Uh-oh. Oh, Lord.
I need, if I can't actually be married to Eric, I need to pretend on Monday morning that he was in the Barca Lounger when this happened. But it's just, I didn't even know which Republican they had on, Eric, but it's such a low bar. He's someone that voted for impeachment, so, he's supposed to be the reasonable, moderate Republican. And it's still, I just was trying to pick out, it still becomes both sides do it. They still have to mimic some version of, and I believe they were saying something about, it's Joe Biden's fault. It's talking about how far right the Republican Party has gone, election denialism, Trumpism, and still embracing Trump, afterwards, and he literally said, "Well, it's Joe Biden's fault for trying to be like too much like LBJ." After they won the Senate, he said, but he said, and then he said both sides. Well, both sides really do it. January 6th, I guess there was riot envy because of Black Lives Matter burning all the cities to the ground. All cities weren't burned to the ground. There was some. Oh my God. And then he said, the Democrats are also delighting in destroying democracy by packing the Supreme Court and abolishing the Senate. So it's okay for them to steal Supreme Court seats, but it's packing the Supreme Court if we talk about expanding it. And we're not talking about abolishing the Senate. We're talking about doing the same thing to the filibuster that Mitch McConnell did. But this is
and those are two things Democrats haven't done, and I'm not sure they're ever going to do.
Right.
But yeah, it's both sides because some people are talking about it. Look, and also, obviously, this is the year anniversary of January 6th, and Trump's going to have a press conference. And guess what? It's going to be covered live. It's going to be covered live.
Normalizing a madman. That's where this starts.
And the press is going to say, well, he's newsworthy, and we're going to hold him accountable. In 4 years, not once did a reporter stand up to Trump and put him in his place in real time like a normal person would have.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen on January 6th. And they all missed the clicks and they all missed the ratings.
Yeah.
And they want him back in the ring so badly, even though they know he's trying to destroy this country.
It's like Bin Laden having a press conference a year after 9/11. It's insane.
It honestly is. It honestly is. And it's not a debate anymore because we've seen this torrent of memos and PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah. We went long because it's been 2 weeks and I need you. All right. Thank you, Eric. I'll see you next week.